I'm Brooke Sprowl, and this is my lovely friend and collaborator, Nicole Buzzelli. She is a poet, author, and energy healer, a very powerful woman with a long history in the educational system, doing some very
Mm,
cool work. And
mm.
Nicole and I have really incredible conversations. So we decided to just get online and see what emerges in the spirit of emergence theory. So, what have you been pondering lately, Nicole?
I feel like I'm in a fall of sorts. I know we're kind of going into fall. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm in a season of I've got a lot of leaves that are coming off.
Hmm.
Yeah, I got lots of things coming off. Shedding things is super uncomfortable.
It's interesting this morning.
Yeah.
I'm finishing my certification in peak performance and flow neuroscience training. And
Mm,
they were talking today about, authentic growth being not so
mm.
much adding anything, but actually removing what's untrue, what's
Yeah.
in the way. And that really squares with my work
Yeah.
as a therapist because so much of my training is in unconscious defense mechanism recognition and compassionate defense interruption and kind of
Mm,
excavating the authentic soul of the person. Because for me personally, I would show up in the world in, before I had done substantial personal work. And of course, we all still do. And I still do show up in this way at times. And probably in all the time in ways that I'm not still aware of. But to a greater extent and more often, I would show up in the world in ways in which um, I was using defense mechanisms in relationships. And
yeah.
I feel like then you get negative feedback from others and you internalize that as something is wrong with me. And it's like, no, actually, it's not you that is wrong or that's getting this negative feedback. It's your defenses. But you come away with the message that it's you. And then you end up doubling down and creating more defense mechanisms. And it creates
Yeah.
this feedback loop because it promotes a sense of insecurity and self distrust. And so part of the trick is recognizing, no, it's not me that's being rejected, hurt, et cetera. It's these things that are in the way of me showing the real me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. I feel like that's exactly what it is. It's getting enough distance from something to see it as something that's actually separate from you. Um, you know, for me, it's like my emotional landscape. Like I'll get in these emotions, insecurity, etc. Fill in the blank, right? All these things, and I'll be unconsciously inside of it. So I'm like becoming that thing, right? And so then the trick the past couple weeks, it's like I keep catching myself. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm in it. I'm like in the thing. I'm becoming the thing. And the trick then is to like find some sort of neutrality enough, not even like a full, like I don't even need to be fully neutral. I just need to be neutral enough to get like enough distance from it to like see it as something that's separate from me.
Mhm.
Right? Like the moment that I feel like it's something I can look at, I can
Mhm.
observe it, is when I stop being it, right? I stop
Right.
becoming it. It's like that
Right.
distance.
And there's so many different ways to frame that experience. Like in cognitive science or neuroscience, we might talk about it as metacognition. In like psychotherapy, we talk about it as the observing ego. As in meditation traditions, we talk about it as maybe the higher self, or there's all these different ways of framing this experience that you're having of stepping outside of yourself, being able to disidentify. I guess that would be more the framing for
Yeah.
meditative
Yeah.
traditions is not identifying with thought or not identifying with the self is probably a better,
Yeah.
more accurate way of framing that. But yeah, it's so interesting how so many different traditions kind of are pointing to the same things with just different language. And
Yeah.
it's so important to, and this is actually kind of the latest iteration of emergence theory is,
Mm.
one of the dialectics that I'm exploring is between metacognition and intuition. So it's like the
Mm.
ability to step outside of ourselves and reflect on our behaviors and kind of, harness our cognitive and intellectual capacity to understand ourselves, but then not without ignoring, not by ignoring the body, not by ignoring our sensations, like kind of what is the optimal balance between this metacognitive skill and this bodily kind of awareness, sensation, wisdom,
Yeah.
intelligence that we have. And I
Yeah.
notice that people tend not to kind of veer to one
Think they have to
extreme.
choose one.
Yeah, and, like, one's
Yeah.
better, like, this one's better, this one's rational, or this
Yeah.
one's better, this one's more spiritual and more grounded and more present. It's like, no, there's actually a dynamic tension between the 2, and they're incomplete without one another, they're counterparts.
Yeah. No, exactly. I find it also kind of feeds the other because I mean, I'll put it in this term, you know, so I've been doing lots of meditation. I'll catch myself in a feeling, um, and then I'll sit and I'll meditate with it, try to get that distance, get that separation. And lately I've been noticing there's a limit with that. I need the body. So yesterday I went to the beach, did some stuff there, kind of bounced around. Today I went on a hike. I actually feel like I can't do one fully without integrating the other one. I can't just sit in meditation and see something from an awareness. I have to catch myself being the feeling in the body in the moment. I have to be able to recognize when I'm in something by the sensation of it. Oh, now I'm feeling this. I know how to discern what that is now. And then I can go back and reinforce things in meditation, but then I need to go reinforce what I'm doing in meditation with what I'm doing in the body.
Mhm.
They have to feed each other. It
Yeah, I've been
can't be
thinking
one or the
about this a
other.
lot because there's such an emphasis right now and a trend in mindfulness. And I love mindfulness. I love meditation and I use these practices. But I notice sometimes in certain mindfulness traditions, there's this like overemphasis on the present, almost demonizing any other state. And I think a really robust experience of the present moment requires us to engage with all our past and future in meaningful ways. So, like, I
Yeah.
have to be in right relationship with my past to be able to experience the present moment. Otherwise, I have all sorts
Yeah.
of cognitive interference and anxiety that's really
Mm.
preventing my ability to be fully present. Similarly, having access or, quite often, I mean, motivationally, our goal states are tied to our well being in the present moment. So, knowing where we're aiming, having a higher purpose, being aligned with a vision for our
Yeah.
lives is a part of an optimal experience of the present. So I've just been realizing on our trip in Italy, David White used the term deracinated present. And I thought that was so like that was exactly the
Mm.
thing that I was trying to kind of work out about what it is that
Mm.
feels incomplete in some approaches to
Mhm.
meditation. And I think people would argue that no, you're being present to all of that. But in practice, that's not exactly how it seems to play out. It seems like it's like, there's a disowning of past and future
Yeah.
in a way that feels potentially compartmentalized or not
Yeah.
like I think there's a much richer way of accessing the present by synthesizing the past and future and present rather than by simply kind of setting the other two aside, even though there's maybe a time to practice that as well. But I don't think it's like the end all be all the way that it's often taught.
Yeah. And I actually think I just see it as kind of like these lines that we have. And whenever I see lines in anything, I always am like, let's investigate why we're drawing these lines between past, present, and future. They probably all exist at a crossroads somewhere and are not separate. And even if we can't maybe always conceptualize it, in my experience of anything that we're drawing lines in between is that when you start to investigate it, the lines are quite blurred. It's never quite that
Nothing is separate.
separate, right?
Nothing
And
all
so
of the lines are just where we draw them, and you can change where you draw them. It's interesting. Have you read the book No Boundaries by Ken Wilber? It's very much in line with what you're talking about. I wish I had it fresh enough in my mind to
mm,
articulate it properly, but essentially, like, there's all these different ways that we can draw different lines within and without, and when you really
mm,
kind of look at it, you recognize there are no actual lines. But
yeah,
I wish it was fresh enough in my mind to be able to, like, give specific
get the
examples.
good
It's
things.
not, yes.
Yeah. It's actually been I haven't really thought of it this way, but I've gotten a healing um on my relationship with time lately. I got a healing on it once I was able to kind of take that line out between my present and my future. I had this tendency to always have this anxiety around making choices, right? And I know that this is not unique to me because I've had a lot of conversations with this about people recently, but this anxiety around making the wrong choice, making the right choice. If I choose this one, what if I'm not going in the direction that I'm supposed to be going in, or that my higher self wants me to be? What if I miss the sign? What if I go left and my sign is over there in the right? What if? And I had this. Have you seen? Did you watch Harry Potter?
I am the only person in the world who has neither read nor seen any of
You're
the
like,
Harry.
no interest, no interest.
Yeah,
It's fine. It's fair.
I started reading like a little bit of it, so I kind of know some things. But
You
Muggles,
don't need
something
to.
about
There's
Muggles.
something about Muggles. God,
Sorry.
those Muggles. They strike again.
Something about you're
No,
not supposed to say Voldemort or something. Is that the
yeah,
one? I can't.
you
I can't.
know,
I also can't discern the difference between the Lord of the Rings people that start with a V and the Vol. It's like
it's all the same.
it's all the
Okay, they're all the same people. They're all the same people.
same.
Well, so there's this scene, and I guess it doesn't really matter, but it was kind of what I had in my head. And this has been in a couple different movies, but there's this scene where Harry, the main character, or the other
I
Brooks out there
I
who have
got
no
I
idea
I think I got
what
that part.
this girl is talking about. So there's Harry, and he is waiting. He's waiting for someone to save him from the scenario that he's in. And, no spoilers in case Brooke wants to watch it later. He's waiting for someone, and he finally, somebody shows up on the other side of the lake. Somebody shows up and does the thing that saves him, right? And later he goes, the future, he travels, time goes on. Later he gets a time turner. He goes back in time to that moment, and he's sitting where the person who he saw from the other side of the lake came to come save him, and he's waiting for that person to show up, and they're not showing up. And he's like, no, I know that they're going to show up because I already experienced this moment, and I know someone shows up. But no one shows up. And so in the end, he goes and he does the thing, and he showed up for himself. It was him, big reveal. It was him saving himself. And two things. I think number one of the big things that I've been shedding, one of the big leaves that I've been shedding, is the same quality that I have around waiting. I'm waiting. I'm always waiting for the sign. I'm waiting for something to save me. I'm waiting. And I've had so many iterations of this in the past, but there's definitely this quality of, when I was a kid, I used to like hang out under doorways because they're a good vantage point. I could see into multiple rooms at once. And so I would sit there like with my back up against the door frame, and I would read or write or just sit, and I would just be scanning my environment, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a pin to drop, waiting for X, Y, and Z, right? And I think there's a little Nicole, there's a part of me that's still waiting in doorways all the time for things to show up. And so that's one of the things that I've been kind of looking at and trying to get separate from. But the other thing was this, I'm waiting for something to happen, and I keep getting scared. If I get up and go into this room, what if something happens in that room that I need to be there for? If I get in this room, what if something happens in that room that I need to get there for? And so I'm living my life sitting underneath a doorway.
Mm.
And I had this thought one day, what if I just assume that this moment has already happened? There's a place in the universe where the future has already happened, and I've already taken care of it, and I've already made the right perfect choice. And then I don't have to wait for anything to show up because I know whatever it is that I do, it's already been done, if that makes sense. Whatever choice I choose has already been made. And so it's this weird, like, I'm almost using predetermination as a way to aid my free will, if that makes sense, as a way to make choices.
I love this so much because interestingly, so obviously I have emergence theory, and someone sent me a video that some physicists are working on by the name of emergence theory. It's fascinating. I'll share it with you, but it talks about how from a temporal perspective, everything has already happened, and that actually there is a way in which we can access and sort of interface with all time, energetically, spiritually, or whatever, which is interesting because it's this like actual, it's not like a new age, like, oh, physics. It's like an actual research collective of physicists who are seriously studying these things. And I think that's fascinating. So I'll have to send that to you.
Please
And then
send that to me.
I feel like I also need to have them as like my next podcast guest. I need to like talk to them. But the other piece that was interesting to me is one that I've sort of kind of gradually begun to embody more of an attitude of what you describe, which I would call faith, really,
Yeah,
because
faith.
I'm
Yeah.
now old enough, as we were talking about earlier. I'm now old enough to where there are enough times in my life where I'm like, oh, that thing went so wrong and I'm devastated. And then I look back and I see how it was all orchestrated. And the more I surrender and accept and allow and trust that everything is a part of a bigger plan, the more that, in a way, I don't know if it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy or if I just see it more clearly or I just have access to that state of consciousness. But my sense is that what you're talking about is really a version of faith. And I think
Yeah.
I think that we access faith in the experience of what it's like to live life in character and integrity. Because the only way that you can have, in my opinion, or at least in my personal experience, I don't think that you can have faith if your character isn't refined properly,
Mm,
because you can't trust that you are going to make the correct kind of adjustments and iterations that are going to ultimately reveal your higher self and needs. So if you're going to just bury your head in the sand, then you can't have faith. If that's your character, is to run and avoid and look away,
right.
then
Right.
there's no orchestration. You're not going to see it. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're
Right.
you're the kind of, recipient of fate and predetermination in this kind of fatalistic way. Whereas when we step into a more open growth mindset, internal locus of control, we begin to understand how um, each part of our lives is absolutely in service of our higher selves. I went to and our unique destiny and what the world is calling forth from us. I worked with
Mm.
an energy healer before I met you, who like it was a 30-minute reading, but she said something like each moment is your teacher, and each and
Yeah.
life is offering the lessons. And it's so true. In each moment, I feel like everything we need is right before us, but we just have to learn to see it. And like the lesson is just to, again, remove those layers. Oh, that was the thing I was going to say earlier that I didn't finish the
Mm.
thought of. The metaphor in the program that I'm doing, the peak performance and flow neuroscience coaching program, was the statue of the David, and how the
Mm.
attitude was not, they go, how did you do this? And it wasn't you add clay and you create this. It was actually, no, it was already in there. You just had to remove it. Did I say that
Yeah. No, but I've
already?
heard
Okay.
this before. I've
Yeah.
heard this or thought like, when you're carving anything, right? You have to chip away to find. I've heard other carvers, like wood carvers, talk about that too. The shape is already in there. It's my job to find it
Hmm.
and to create it. And yeah, it's a
And
chipping away.
yeah, and then back to this point of, it's already there. Like
It's already
your
there.
destiny, your calling, your unique experience, like it's already
Yeah.
in there. And all you're doing is just, in each moment, what do I need to just let go of and surrender
Yeah.
and allow for? And then
Yeah.
and then there's this other dialectic that I've been exploring, in emergence theory and in my own personal life around agency and surrender, right? It's like, and it's the serenity prayer, give me the strength to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And,
Yeah.
that's so interesting, right? Because so often our, I think, redemption, salvation, freedom lies in surrender, but not always. Sometimes we're really required to have agency, and knowing when is the time to surrender and when is the time to
Yeah.
bring forth what feels necessary for us. Goes back to that other dialectic around metacognition and bodily intuition and sensation. Sorry,
Right.
I'm having a moment.
Having a moment, it all connects. It always all connects.
It does.
Yeah, and they all, again, they serve each other, right? Having agency serves when it's time to surrender, and surrendering serves your ability to have agency. They're not separate things. They serve, they feed each other. And it's I think what you were saying about we have to learn how to see it, that's that's an easier said than done. Like that is a constant commitment, right? To commit to learning how to see things and to commit to lifelong craftsmanship of seeing. It's a craft.
I think it's the craft of character and integrity, though, because it's really just the craft of being committed to truth. And
Yeah, exactly.
when you are living
Exactly.
in commitment to truth above all else, not
Right.
outcome, not what I want to happen, but
Right.
really I am simply going
What
to,
is true?
insofar as I can, iteratively, you know, excavate what is true to me in my lived experience, in my words, and how I make choices and my values. I begin to uncover the orchestration. So I think
Yeah.
the perspective and the perception of orchestration, the experience of faith and trust, is a natural emergent property of
Mm.
that character and
Yeah.
the commitment to character and integrity.
Yeah. I'm finding a lot of relief. It's a relief. It feels like I get to put effort on the altar. I think
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, I think most people I know are doing the best they can. Maybe not all the people I know, but I think most of the people I know are doing the best they can. And sometimes faith is feeling like a s- I get to surrender that even. Like like there seems to be a relief in not having to think so, not having to spend so much energy, being able to take my energy out of what's the right choice, what's the wrong choice. Feels like relief. It feels like
Yeah.
washing up on the shore. Like it
Mm.
feels like relief. I faith feels there's a lot of relief in it.
Yeah, I think that's the medicine right now for us
Mm,
culturally, that, in our culture, there's such this masculine, do, produce, effort, willpower, agency, like all of the value system, or a majority of the value system in our culture is around those things. And there isn't as much balance, and wholeness and, emphasis on the faith, the surrender, the acceptance, the allowance.
yeah.
And so I think that's why there's so much relief when we engage in that, because we're not accustomed to having the permission. And when we finally give ourselves the permission, it's like water.
Yeah, it is. It's like water. And I think what you're saying is there's this sense of relief in when you discover the other side of things, right? So if
Mhm.
you have only been experiencing life through agency and you discover surrender, there's like, oh God, thank God there's another side to this thing,
And then
right?
and then the same is true in the other direction, and that's why there's always
Exactly.
the yin and the yang. There's always
Exactly.
the dynamic tension, which is right in on the line
Exactly.
between, and the way these things interlock together and hold hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't even, I've been talking a lot about, I have a friend and we've been talking a lot about um, just coping strategies that we use to navigate our emotional landscapes growing up. And my strategy was I find freedom in emotions. I go into the emotion, I find all my freedom and play there. His strategy is I find freedom from emotions, right? So I find the distance.
Mhm.
and we both have gotten to a place in our lives where our single nature of our strategies isn't working and we need more tools for the tool belt. And there's a relief. I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have to always feel things. Thank God. And he's like, thank God I get to feel things. Thank
Right.
God.
Yeah, exactly. And this is dialecticism, right? It's we're on one extreme and then we go to another and kind of hypercorrect and then we synthesize the two and then that becomes a new thing and then we go to the and then
Yeah.
we're all, that's the iterative nature of it. And I think, it reminds me of there's this episode of Radio Lab. I think it's called Words. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
And it's fascinating because this neuroscience researcher, it starts with this neuroscience researcher who's had a left brain hemisphere stroke. And what that
Mm,
means is that her kind of linguistic ability goes
mm,
away, which is
mm.
where so much of us live in our culture, I think. And so she can't access words anymore, but she can still like perform her surgeries because that right brain is still intact. Like she can still kind of remember things visually, but she can't like she doesn't know what a kidney is or she doesn't know what the corpus callosum in the brain is or whatever. She can imagine
Interesting.
things visually, but she can't access
Yeah.
the words. But she describes this stroke and this state, thereafter before she relearned language as so freeing and so,
Wow.
blissful and so this incredible experience and kind of elevates it. And then they tell this other story of this person who grew up, I think in South America, many years ago, before there was, and this person didn't learn sign language. They call him Ildefonso. I don't know if that must be a pseudonym. They call him Ildefonso, and they say he didn't have, he never grew up even with the ability to sign. He was deaf and mute, and he didn't grow up with the ability to sign or speak or anything. And this woman is trying to figure out how to teach him language, and
Um,
she can't figure out they show up every day, 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 and she can't figure it. And because she's writing stuff on the board and he can't understand how it corresponds. And then she has this breakthrough where she decides to act out the role of the teacher and the student. So she goes up and she shows a thing and then she sits down and she's like, "Oh, okay." And she starts pointing and he gets it. He like has this moment where he's like, "Oh, there's a word for the desk." Like he's and he just starts
ah.
weeping.
Oh.
And he later then describes the experience as
Whew.
like the dark time. And he's like, I was so alone. I was so
Mm,
isolated. And I
mm.
remember in like high school or something, goes back to us being like the elders at like age 5. I wrote something like language is the metaphysical hands through which our cloistered minds touch fingers or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just interesting, right? Because
Yeah.
there's both are true.
It's
And I think
both are true.
and when I also think about like punditry and like political discourse and like a lot of different kind of what feel to me like out of integrity kind of cultural forces right now, it's that they're speaking to one part of the truth in a
Yeah.
dialectic. They're
Yeah.
speaking to it without adding
Yeah.
the full
The other
picture. And
side.
it's not that what they're
Yeah.
saying is untrue, and that's why it resonates for a lot of people because it's true, but it's true
Right.
in a greater context. And without that
Yeah.
context, things become unbalanced and sick.
I think what you're saying about this isolated truth or this segmentation of truth, right, goes to speaks to people becoming the thing, which is rather than being able to separate from it, because when you're able to separate, you get the aerial view, right? You get to see the full circle, and not when you zoom in on a circle, what you see is a line, so it looks like a segment of something. When you zoom out, you would see, oh, it's a circle. And I
Exactly.
think the lack of ability to distance from our feelings, um, is that.
From our thoughts, from our feelings,
Our thoughts, our
from our
feeling, our
identities, from
experience,
our
from our
insecurities.
the
Yeah,
day to day.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the maybe not even just to distance, but to find that optimal balance between connection and distance
right,
again, because,
right.
the moment that we say distance is the answer, it's like, no, no, like we need
No,
that optimal kind of connection distance
it's
conversation.
what the medicine is, right?
Yeah.
So I recently looked up the etymology of the word medicine, and the prefix med is Latin, And it literally means to take appropriate measure, which I think is beautiful, because whatever the specific ailment is, you can ask, what's the appropriate measure? Right? So, and that's going to change. The appropriate measure for a heart that is too closed is different than the appropriate measure for a heart that is too open. Right? So, when you're finding yourself in too connected and unable, the appropriate measure is distance. And if you can only be distant, the appropriate measure is connectivity. And the wholeness of that is healing, when you're able to embody the wholeness of it. But when you're stuck, when you're in pain, it's because you're stuck somewhere, right? So find where you're stuck and then ask what the appropriate measure is to loosen it
Yeah,
up.
it's just a constant calibration, recalibration,
Yeah.
and conversation, I think, with these different, aspects of our experience as humans. Well, Nicole, thank you so
I
much for
know.
joining us today. I'm so glad we were able to connect and really enjoyed our conversation. I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah. See ya.